I don't know, and I'm doing everything I can to get that changed because it's not right. And you're exactly right. That's what the Bible Belt does. You know, that's what they do, but they don't live it always, not necessarily. But I think it's a way we are perceived, and I think it'll take maybe several more years to get the women more accepted than they have been in the past. And what I was doing at Goodyear was like a trailblazer because not many women had held that job for any length of time. To my knowledge, I was probably one of the only ones that held it as long as I did. And I was good at it. I liked it. And I was told I was good at it. No one ever told me until we got to trial that I was doing a bad job.
Right. So when we talk about how much pay women are getting versus men, and if we talk about white women getting, say, 78 cents on the dollar, and African Americans getting lower than that, and Latinas getting less than 50 cents on the dollar to men, many other economic issues like the minimum wage, like unionization, other ways to buoy wages that haven't kept pace with inflation, receive a lot of attention. And yet this issue, which affects half the population, is an economic crisis, doesn't seem to get as much play on the national radar. How can we change the conversation and get people to care about and focus on this issue the same way we do about other issues?
We have to keep educating the public, the young people, and that's why I am so proud that I have the book in the works, because that will be left for historical reasons.
Right.
And we have to keep talking to people in the schools, the colleges, and every opportunity I get, I do that because I want the public educated to know how to change the climate for people working and for their American families. And I do know that the president we have right now, that he was part of the he was one of the supporters of the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. He voted for it when he was still in the Senate the first time, and that was one of the bills that Vice President Biden voted for. It was the last bill he voted for before he left. So we have a couple in the White House with the Obamas and the Bidens that support this, and they understand, both of them, what it's like to work in Middle America.
Have you been happy with the emphasis that this administration has placed on these issues? Happy with the pace of progress?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I understand why paycheck fairness it was supposed to be covered last June, and I understand, you know, the crisis that we had with our banking industry and some others. Now health issues come along, so in, of course, the war, I understand why the focus of the president and the Congress right now is on those items. But we will get back to paycheck fairness, and we will get it passed.
So you had an opportunity to dance with President Obama at the inauguration. What was that like?
That was marvelous. That was my claim to fame, because it was such a wonderful opportunity to have our pictures made, and we were on ABC, and it was such a wonderful opportunity to have that. And I've had so many opportunities with him and his campaigning for him, and then I got to speak at the Democratic convention last year during prime time, right prior to Senator Hillary Clinton at the time.
Got it. Now, what are your plans for the future beyond the book and the movie deal? Which, if there's a movie in the works, who would you want to play you?
I don't know. I've heard a lot of people suggest Meryl Streep. She'd be a good one. That would be good.
That would be good. So what are your plans for the future?
Well, I've had a full calendar this year, traveling to schools, universities, and political organizations, and I want to keep doing that. I turned down being negotiated with about running for public office. If I were
was what
younger,
I was going to ask about. Yeah,
if I were younger, I would have jumped on it in a heartbeat. But I feel right now that Lilly Ledbetter can be more instrumental in sharing my story in audiences or one-on-one or in interviews like yours.
Educating people, like you said.
That's correct. And if I was limited to serving in the House or in a position, I would have to concentrate on the responsibilities and the duties. And this way, I think, maybe talk to more people and maybe educate them on really what it's really like.
And be an advocate for one of the most important economic issues of our time that doesn't really get a lot of attention. So beyond the Paycheck Fairness Act, what sort of legislative priorities should be undertaken, and what other things besides legislation need to be done to sort of rectify this gross injustice?
Well, legislation right now, in my opinion, would be the best way, but the Paycheck Fairness, and then Senator Tom Harkin from Iowa, he has a bill called Fair Pay, which would require employers to post their job structures and their wages, and that would have been a tremendous help to me. I would have known years ago that I was being paid less. And then in my case, the $3.8 million, it got knocked down immediately to $300,000.
The $3.8 million for
what the jury came
right.
back and
okay.
awarded.
Right.
But the judge had to immediately lower it to $300,000 because there's a cap. Congress put a cap on in the early 90s that limits it to $300,000 if you work for a large employer like I did, and if you work for a smaller one, it might only be $50,000. So that needs to be worked on, because a person like myself who's worked there for 19 years, and there's nothing in the law that allows you a provision to go back and re-get any of your lost retirements or those lost overtime hours that I missed
So
on.
even had you won, the maximum you would have gotten is $300,000.
And 60. They would have given me 60 on equal back pay.
For a lifetime of discrimination and hard labor. And yet the other side talks consistently about tort reform.
That's correct. That's correct, David. That's correct. It's really a shame, because a person like myself, and then like now, you know, it's really hard to make ends meet when you've been shortchanged in your working years and you're already behind, and then you come up short with your retirement checks and your Social Security. And it really needs to be changed and addressed.
Well, before we close, is there anything else that you think is really important to say to our viewers about this subject?
I do. I really want people across the country to accept that it is, like the President said when he signed the bill, it's a family affair. This is a family issue. It's a human rights that anyone in this country should have, to be treated and paid fairly. We women and minorities, we don't want anything handed to us, or we don't want it given to us. I just always wanted what I had earned and I was entitled to under the law. And I would like to close a lot of these loopholes that are still out there for employers. They're large enough for them to drive a truck through.
Right. It shakes my faith in the free market and arguments about free market to hear someone say, well, the market will solve everything, when clearly for the same work, it's not that women do worse work than men, especially in white-collar jobs, that the market is paying so much less for this labor. It just seems like exploitation.
Absolutely, absolutely, because there was nothing that was different about my performance than my peers, except our pay.
So we need to step in and make sure that injustice is solved. Well, thank you. That's unfortunately all the time we have for this segment. You've been a tremendous guest, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and experiences with us. I very, very much appreciate it.
Thank you, David, for helping me get the word out.
Absolutely, happy to do it.
Thank you.
It's extremely important. All right, next up will be part 2 of today's show with Gloria Allred.